Who would be a merman bold, sitting alone under the sea, with a crown of gold and a throne?
Aquatic mythology tends to speak mostly of mermaids, occasionally of merfolk, yet mermen are frequently forgotten about. It's nearly always a human male hero or victim who interacts with a mermaid, or rarely the other way round. Until the comic books of the 1940s, myths concerning mermen are few and far between, but they are there, peering out between the seaweed, so to speak. In the sea of tales and legends featuring mermaids meeting humans, surfaces the occasional tale of humans meeting mermen. An account was given in 1811 by one John MacIsaac, further testified to by respectable ministers Dr. George Robertson, Mr. Norman MacLeod, and James Maxwell, of one such encounter. In his testimony he states,
that about 3 or 4 o'clock of the afternoon of Sunday the 13th of October, having taken a walk towards the seaside, he came to the edge of a precipice above the shore, from which he saw the appearance of something white upon a black rock at some distance from him. That upon looking at this object with attention, he was impressed with great surprise and astonishment at its uncommon appearance. That it lay flat upon the rock, seemingly upon its belly, with its head towards the sea, that the upper half of it was white and of the shape of a human body, and the other half towards the tail, of a brindled or reddish-grey colour, apparently covered with scales, but the extremity of the tail itself was of a greenish-red shining colour.
He goes into further detail, describing the long hair, the tremulous movement of the tail, and how, when the merman tumbled into the sea, John MacIsaac
got immediately upon his feet from the place of his concealment, and in about a minute thereafter he observed the animal appearing above water, very near to the said rock, and then for the first time he saw its face, every feature of which he could distinctly mark, and which had all the appearance of the face of a human being, with very hollow eyes.
A similar account and description was given 3 years later, in 1814, by 2 fishermen of Port Gordon near Raffan. Thomas Johnston and William Gordon were returning to their homes after a day's fishing when, they said, they saw something in the water near the shore.
His countenance was swarthy, his hair short and curled, of a colour between a green and a grey. He had small eyes, a flat nose, his mouth was large, and his arms of an extraordinary length. Above the waist he was shaped like a man, but from the waist downwards his body tapered considerably, like a large fish without scales. The men, however, had not long time to observe him, for after looking steadfastly at them for about a quarter of a minute, he suddenly dived, but rose again at some distance from the boat, accompanied by another, whom the men supposed to be a female, as they could perceive she had breasts and her hair was not curled.
Perhaps one of the more detailed and curious accounts is that of the Wild Man of Orford, which was later recorded by Abbot Ralph of Coggeshall in the Chronicon Anglicanum in 1200.
It happened that some fishermen, fishing in the sea there, caught in their nets a merman.
In the late 12th century, fishermen sailing off the coast of Suffolk were surprised to discover in their fishing nets a mysterious creature, apparently a merman, complete with hairy chest and beard, who was unable to speak. The fishermen took the creature to the castle, newly built by Bartholomew de Granville, where he was kept and fed, raw fish being his favourite dish. The merman remained incapable of speech, it seemed, even under torture. He was also taken to the local church and, perhaps unsurprisingly, failed to distinguish it from any other building in the vicinity. Eventually he was permitted to swim in the sea within a netted area, which he easily swam under, reappearing far out to sea. To his captor's surprise, however, he returned to land and his cell in the castle. Over time the guards grew lax, and one day the merman swam out and did not return.
as to whether this was a mortal man or some fish pretending human shape, or was an evil spirit hiding in the body of a drowned man, as can be read in the life of Blessed Owen, it is not possible to be precise. The more so because so many wonderful things of this kind are told by many to whom they have happened.
Merfolk continued to form a part of the mythological canon, and the early 19th century saw the mermaid still hovering between myth and reality, and entering the literary scene. Two works appeared by notable authors of the time: The Pirate by Sir Walter Scott, published in 1821, and Alfred Lord Tennyson's two poems The Mermaid and the Merman, barely 10 years later in 1830. Based on the use of the mermaid motif in both works, it does look like there is more than a passing connection between the two. In her article, Tennyson's Mermaid Poems, an Additional Source, Linda K. Hughes suggests that the young Tennyson was not only familiar with the novel, but that he was inspired or influenced by elements of it in his own work. Sir Walter Scott's novel The Pirate is, as its title suggests, mainly about piracy, with shipwreck, intrigue and romance, and an added dash of the supernatural. In addition to fairies and spells, Scott references mermaids in more than one instance.
The mermaid was still seen to glide along the waters by moonlight, and mingling her voice with the sighing breeze was often heard to sing of subterranean wonders, or to chant prophecies of future events.
In another section, he describes a masked ball where a group of guests go, dressed as mermen and mermaids. In one scene, one mermaid and one merman sing alternating verses of a song before being joined by the rest of their company for a final chorus. This structure is closely mirrored in the poems by Tennyson from 1830, The Mermaid and the Merman, two poems with alternating viewpoints of male and female. Who would be a mermaid fair, singing alone, combing her hair, under the sea in a golden curl, with the comb of pearl on a throne? I would be a mermaid fair, I would sing to myself the whole of the day. With the comb of pearl I would comb my hair, and still as I combed I would sing and say, Who is it loves me? Who loves not me?
I would be a merman bold. I would sit and sing the whole of the day. I would fill the sea halls with a voice of power. But at night I would roam abroad and play with the mermaids in and out of the rocks, dressing their hair with the white sea flower, and holding them back by their flowing locks, I would kiss them often under the sea.
Scott's merfolk are human maskers at a ball. Tennyson later commented on how, I never thought of mermen and mermaidens with tails, and they do run about a good deal in his poems, suggesting human-like creatures who happen to be able to breathe underwater. More importantly, Hughes points out the form of Tennyson's merfolk poems could have been suggested by the mask scene from Scott's novel. But, she goes on to imply, there is more than books, libraries and words at work here. It is possible the poem has another deeply personal connection with Scott's novel, one that would not be immediately visible to outsiders. In Scott's The Pirate, one of the male leads, Mordaunt, is son to Mr. Merton. Both are strangers to Zetland, and after their arrival, Mr. Merton sets about educating his son as follows.
If Mertoun was whimsical in his mode of governing his household, he seemed no less so in his plan of educating his son. He showed the youth but few symptoms of parental affection. Yet, in his ordinary state of mind, the improvement of Mordaunt's education seemed to be the utmost object of his life. He had both books and information sufficient to discharge the task of tutor in the ordinary branches of knowledge, and in this capacity was regular, calm, and strict, not to say severe, in exacting from his pupil the attention necessary for his profiting. But in the perusal of history, to which their attention was frequently turned, as well as in the study of classic authors, there often occurred facts or sentiments which produced an instant effect upon Mertoun's mind and brought on him suddenly what Swerther, Swain, and even Mordaunt came to distinguish by the name of his dark hour. He was aware in the usual case of its approach and retreated to an inner apartment into which he never permitted even Mordaunt to enter. Here he would abide in seclusion for days and even weeks, only coming out at uncertain times to take such food as they had taken care to leave within his reach, which he used in wonderfully small quantities. At other times, and especially during the winter solstice, when almost every person spends the gloomy time within doors in feasting and merriment, this unhappy man would wrap himself in a dark-coloured sea-cloak and wander out along the stormy beach or upon the desolate heath, indulging his own gloomy and wayward reveries under the inclement sky, the rather that he was then most sure to wander unencountered and unobserved.
Sir Walter Scott, The Pirate, 1821. As a young man, Tennyson would have been familiar with his father's library, which included such titles as T.C. Croker's Fairy Legends, Thomas Keightley's Fairy Mythology, John Leyden's The Mermaid, and quite possibly Scott's novels, although this is not proven. His father, Dr. Tennyson, was rector of Somersby, who in 1820 decided to educate his sons himself, with the help of his library. However, he overestimated his own energies, and his education plan for his progeny proved to be simultaneous with his own decline into bouts of depression, despondency, and seizures, even fits of violence, which continued until his death in 1831. According to Sir Charles Tennyson, both a descendant and a Tennyson scholar, the doctor's condition was by 1822 already alarming, followed by a complete breakdown in 1824. Despite his condition, the doctor continued to educate his children, in spite of protests from friends. His symptoms closely resemble those of Basil Merton.
The rector's distressing condition intensified his moods of depression and produced periods of extreme lethargy, so that he would lie in bed for 48 hours on end.
From Alfred Tennyson by Sir Charles Tennyson, 1949. Dr. Tennyson was undoubtedly devoted to the education of his sons, but his bouts of depression, the seizures, and the drinking surely contributed to young Tennyson feeling at best neglected, at worst rejected. Seeking solace in tales of adventure and fantasy, it's easy to imagine him obtaining copies of the latest novels, including The Pirate, and to wonder what he might have felt when reading of Mordaunt's relationship with his father Brian Merton. The parallels between the Mertons and the Tennysons are chillingly similar. Did Sir Walter Scott possess psychic abilities? Both Hughes and Sir Charles Tennyson suggest that Tennyson surely read Walter Scott's novels, including The Pirate. He may have noted the extreme similarity between Mordaunt's position and his own. And so the seeds were sown, not only from his own experience, but from the pages of Scott's novel. Or was it all simply some curious coincidence?
There would be neither moon nor star, but the wave would make music above us afar. Low thunder and light in the magic night, neither moon nor star. They would call aloud in the dreary dells, call to each other and whoop and cry all night, merrily, merrily. They would pelt me with starry spangles and shells, laughing and clapping their hands between, all night, merrily, merrily. But I would throw them back in mine, turquoise and agate and almandine. Then leaping out upon them unseen, I would kiss them often under the sea, and kiss them again till they kissed me laughingly, laughingly. Oh, what a happy life were mine, under the hollow-hung ocean green. Soft are the moss beds under the sea. We would live merrily, merrily.